If it's meant for you, it will come. You've heard this before. Maybe someone said it to comfort you when something you wanted didn't arrive. Maybe you've said it to yourself, quietly, in the space between hope and disappointment. And for a moment it helped. It gave the waiting a shape, a reason, a kind of order. But here is what most people never ask. Meant by whom? Meant according to what? If you think about it carefully, this phrase is either the most passive thing you can say, or it is pointing at something that almost nobody actually looks at. Because there is a version of this phrase that turns it into a kind of spiritual wishful thinking, a way of sitting still and hoping, letting life happen to you, calling it acceptance. And there is another version, a much deeper version, that points at something genuinely worth understanding, not as comfort, but as a way of seeing how life actually works. That second version is what this video is about. Not the phrase as a consolation, but the phrase as a window into something the Buddha pointed at very clearly, that there is an order to how things come and go in our lives. And that order does not ask for your approval. Before going further, one thing needs to be said clearly. This is not about fate. It is not about destiny. It is not the idea that the universe has a plan for you, that everything happens for a reason, that some higher force is arranging your life from above. The Buddha did not teach that. What the Buddha pointed at is something far more precise and far less comfortable. He called it Dharma, the way things actually are, the law of how causes produce effects, how conditions arise and pass, how nothing exists in isolation, how everything that enters your life arrives through a specific set of causes, some visible, many invisible, most of which you had no say in. This is a different kind of order, not a cosmic plan, not a reward system, not a test designed for your benefit, just the natural movement of causes, meeting conditions, producing results. Rain falls, seeds grow, or they don't, not because the rain decided to favor one seed over another, but because conditions, soil depth, timing, temperature, were either present or they weren't. When we say, if it's meant for you, it will come, within this framework, what it actually means is, when the conditions are complete, the result will arise, whether or not you wanted it, whether or not you were ready. And the reverse is equally true. When the result does not arise, some condition is still missing, not because you failed, and not because the universe is withholding something, but because the causes are not yet complete. That is a quiet but significant shift from how most people understand this phrase. Here is where this becomes less comfortable and more honest. We tend to assume that what is meant for us is what we want: the relationship, the recognition, the resolution, the peace. So we wait for those things. We watch for them. We measure how far we still are from the version of life we're expecting. But the Dharma does not operate according to your wish list. It operates according to what needs to be learned. And those are not always the same thing. Think about this carefully. what has actually arrived in your life over the past several years. Not what you wanted to arrive. What actually came. For most people, if they are honest, the list includes things they did not ask for. Loss, illness, disappointment, loneliness, a relationship that broke, a plan that failed, a silence that lasted longer than expected. These things came. They were not invited. You did not plan for them. You may have fought against them, or done everything to prevent them. And yet they came, within the view the Buddha offered. That is not an accident. That is the Dharma, bringing exactly what was needed. Not for your comfort, but for your seeing. Not the experience you requested, the lesson you were ready to receive. Or more precisely, the lesson that could only be received through that particular experience. A man loses a job he was certain would be permanent. He does not ask for that lesson. But through that loss, something is exposed that success had kept hidden. A relationship with security that had become his entire identity. A fear he had never had to face before. A rigidity in how he imagined his life was supposed to look. The loss did not come to punish him, but it came, and it brought with it something that no comfortable year could have taught. That is what meant for you actually means. In this framework, not what you desired, what you were capable of receiving as a teaching, given where you were, given what you had not yet seen. There is a particular kind of resistance that arises when we hear this. It sounds like, so you're saying my suffering was for my benefit? Or, so I was supposed to go through that? And that resistance is worth examining, because the teaching is not saying that. It is not saying suffering is good. It is not saying you should be grateful for pain. It is not saying the person who hurt you was doing you a favor. What it is saying is more precise than that. It is saying, whatever arrived through a complete set of causes. And within that arrival, there was something to be seen. That could not have been seen any other way. Whether you saw it or not, that is a different question. Whether you were willing to look, also a different question. Ajahn Chah, the Thai forest teacher, had a way of putting this that stays with people long after they hear it. He said, if you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. But underneath that teaching about letting go is a prior question. What is it that you're holding? And very often, what we are holding is not just the thing we lost. We are holding the story that it should not have come, that it should not have been this way, that something went wrong. And as long as we hold that story, this should not have happened. The lesson inside the experience cannot be received because we are busy arguing with the delivery. Most people spend enormous energy disputing what arrived. The failed relationship should not have failed. The loss should not have come. The silence should not have lasted this long. And while that argument continues, the very thing the experience was capable of teaching passes by, unnoticed. This is not about being passive. It is not about accepting everything without discernment. It is about something much more specific. Can you look at what arrived, even the painful thing, and ask honestly, what is this showing me that I could not have seen without it? That question is not natural. It does not arise automatically. For most people, it takes years, sometimes decades, before they can ask it without flinching. But the asking itself is the beginning of actually receiving what was brought. Now turn it around, because this teaching moves in both directions. We have been looking at what has arrived. Now look at what hasn't. The thing you've been waiting for. The relationship. The answer. The change. The clarity. Most people, when something they want doesn't come, assume one of three things: that they haven't tried hard enough, that life is unfair, or that they just need to wait a little longer. But within the framework of Dharma, of causes and conditions, there is a fourth possibility that rarely gets examined. The condition that is missing may not be outside of you. Think about that slowly. We tend to look outward. The opportunity hasn't arrived. The person hasn't appeared. The circumstances haven't aligned. But conditions are not only external. They include the interior landscape, what you can see clearly, and what you still cannot, what you are willing to face, and what you are still avoiding, what has been released, and what is still being held. A woman waits for years for a relationship that feels genuinely safe. She does the external things. She meets people. She remains open. And yet it doesn't come. And she cannot understand why. But when she looks more carefully, not at what is missing outside, but at what is still unexamined inside, she begins to see something. A particular way she relates to closeness. A pattern that activates the moment another person gets near enough to matter. Something that says, "Don't trust this, it will be taken." That interior condition, still unseen, still operating below awareness, is itself a cause. And while it remains unseen, the result she is waiting for cannot fully arrive, not because life is withholding it, but because one of the necessary conditions is still not present. This is uncomfortable. It is meant to be, because it places something back in the field of what you can actually work with, not by forcing the outcome, not by trying harder in the same direction, but by being willing to look at the interior landscape honestly. What in me has not yet been seen clearly enough for this to arrive, not as self-blame, not as evidence that something is wrong with you, but as a genuine inquiry, one that takes the teaching seriously. There is one more dimension of this that needs to be said plainly, even when internal conditions are clear, even when you have looked honestly, worked with what you found, released what could be released. Timing still operates outside of your control. The seed does not dictate when it will become a tree. The cloud does not decide when it will become rain. These things have their own timing, arising when all conditions are complete, not one moment before. This is the part of the teaching that is hardest to hold, because we are very uncomfortable with the idea that there is a pace to things that we cannot negotiate. We live in a time that insists everything can be accelerated, Results should come faster. Growth should be measurable. Progress should be visible by the end of the week. And when it isn't, we assume something is wrong. With us, with the method, with the effort. But the Dharma does not operate on demand. It operates on completion. When causes are assembled, results arise. Not when you're ready. Not when you've waited long enough. Not when you deserve it. When the conditions are complete. There is a kind of peace available in this. But it is not the peace of being reassured. It is the peace of clearly seeing what is and is not yours to control. Your part, to look clearly, to work with what is yours to work with, to release what cannot be controlled, to remain present with what is actually here. Not your part, the timing, the form the result takes, whether it matches what you imagined, whether it arrives at all in this lifetime. That last line is not pessimism. It is honesty. Some things we wait for never arrive in the form we expected. And sometimes, when we look back, we can see that something else arrived instead. Something that could not have been received had the original thing come. The Dharma has a strange efficiency. It does not waste experience. Every arrival teaches. Every absence teaches. The waiting itself, if you look at it honestly, teaches. Nothing is lost, only unexamined. So what does this mean practically? Not as philosophy, as something you can actually work with. Right now, the waiting that most people experience is a kind of active suspension. Life on pause. Real living will begin when the thing arrives. This moment just maintenance. Just enduring. Just getting through until then. But look at what the Dharma is actually pointing at. The waiting is not empty. It is full. It is full of conditions that are either being assembled or being ignored. Full of interior landscape that is either being examined or avoided. Full of life, actual life. That is happening, whether or not you've decided to show up for it. The Buddha did not teach that waiting is the problem. He taught that unconscious waiting is the problem. Waiting while asleep to what is actually happening. Waiting while arguing with what arrived. Waiting while refusing to examine what the Dharma is already showing. The practice, if there is one, is simpler than it sounds. Not a technique, not a method, just this. Turn toward what is actually here. Not the imagined future. Not the explanation for why the future hasn't arrived. What is actually present right now, including the waiting itself. The waiting has a texture, a quality, a particular tightening, or heaviness, or restlessness. What is that? Can you look at it? The way the Dharma asks you to look at anything, without adding the story of what it means, without demanding it change, without immediately reaching for the solution. Just look, because within the waiting, if you look clearly enough, you will find the very conditions that the Dharma is already working with. Not later, now. And what can be seen clearly begins to shift, not because you willed it to, but because clear seeing is itself one of the conditions that allows things to move. So if it's meant for you, will it come? Here is the most honest answer available. What is meant for you, in the deepest sense, is not a specific outcome. It is a specific seeing. Life is constantly bringing you what your own causes have assembled. Some of it arrives as the thing you wanted. Some of it arrives as the thing you feared. Some of it arrives as the lesson, wrapped inside the loss. And some of it is still waiting, not because life is withholding it, but because one of the interior conditions is still ripening. The phrase, "if it's meant for you, it will come," is not a promise. It is a description of how things work. What is meant for you will arrive through conditions, including the ones you can actually work with right now. And what has not yet come may be waiting for something in you to be seen clearly enough to allow it to arrive. This is not comfortable teaching, but it is honest teaching. And honest teaching is the only kind that actually leads anywhere. If something in this video opened a question rather than closed one, a question you're still sitting with, share it in the comments. Those questions are worth more than easy answers. And if this kind of honest, quiet looking is what you came here for, subscribe. There's more here. Not solutions, just clearer seeing. One conversation at a time.